Thank you for joining us this afternoon for the very first IWF Read Book Club meetup. I am your host, Ashley MacLeay, and with me are two of my colleagues, Kelsey Bolar and Amber Schwartz. Hi, guys.
Hello.
Hi.
Together with all of you here online today, we're going to be discussing this month's read, With All Due Respect, Defending America with Grit and Grace, by former UN Ambassador and Governor of South Carolina, Nikki Haley. During this time of uncertainty, Independent Women's Forum wanted to find a way to stay connected and engaged with all of you. It's really nice to get together and virtually grab a cup of tea and talk about our future books and what we're reading. I'm really excited, and just so everyone knows, that this inaugural book club, we had over 500 registrants. So we're happy to see that so many women and men are interested in IWF Read. It just goes to show, in an uncertain time like this, community is so important. We're so glad that you're here with us today and hope you'll stay with us for this new adventure. We'll feature a new book periodically, and we look forward to your feedback. If you haven't already, please join our exclusive Facebook group for our book club. It's a place where we can talk about the books, we can read leading up to our virtual book club meetup. And to join this meetup, make sure you search IWF Reads Book Club in your Facebook browser. Before we get started, I'd like to turn it over to Amber Schwartz to say a few words about the Independent Women's Forum. Amber?
Yeah, thank you, Ashley. And thank you everyone for joining us today. This is Independent Women's Forum's first IWF Reads Book Club. And as Ashley mentioned, and we're just so happy. We're thrilled that we can all be together and that we can stay connected. We hope each of you joining this afternoon are safe and healthy. Earlier this week, IWF hosted a private briefing with the White House on the coronavirus crisis. And it was reassuring to hear all of the safety and security measures they are taking to keep Americans safe and reopen America. From looking at the guest list, we have a lot of new names joining us. So I just want to take 30 seconds to introduce you to Independent Women's Forum. We are the leading national women's organization dedicated to developing and advancing policies that aren't just well-intended, but they actually enhance people's freedom, choices, and their well-being. We're in the room helping influence some of the top policy proposals, regulatory reforms, and legal challenges of our time. We have dedicated staff. They're sharp. We have a sharp communication staff, legal minds. We also make a point to champion women from all across the country, celebrating their accomplishments and lives. And I honestly cannot think of a better person to celebrate today than Ambassador Nikki Haley. And I really look forward to the discussion with all of you for the next hour. And if you want to get more involved with IWF, please visit our website at iwf.org and sign up to receive the latest news, updates, events, and everything from IWF. And be sure to follow us on social media, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. Friend, and maybe even a supporter. So with that, I will turn it back over to Ashley to get things rolling.
Thanks so much, Amber. Since this is our very first IWF Reads Book Club meetup, and there are so many of you joining us today, we have a few items we would like for everyone to know about the virtual event platform we're using, so you can get the most out of today's discussion. There is a chat room in the chat tab in the upper right-hand corner. If you do not see the chat field, you can select the caret in the top right corner to open the chat window. We'll be posting questions throughout the discussion, and we want you to chat along. Answer the questions. Tell us what you liked, what you don't like. Elaborate. Feel free to discuss with other members too. We want this to be engaging, and we want to hear a discussion from you. Second, to that effect, please be respectful of others. Please do not use foul language, and consider that everyone has good intentions when they're posting. Nikki Haley even mentions that kindness prevails in her book. If you are interested in joining the video discussions and chatting with the hosts, let us know by adding a capital V. That's a capital V to the end of your chat. That way we can pull you up here to discuss. And if you don't want to be on video, you can turn your microphone on and off and your video off. You don't have to be on video, and you can add your thoughts live. For those of us joining via phone or tablet, if you have a poor connection, we may not, unfortunately, be able to pull you up here with us. Next to the chat field, you'll see a questions tab. If you have specific questions you would like to ask the hosts, please add your questions here. If they're added in the chat, we likely won't see them. If you're willing to come up on camera to ask your question and join, add a capital V at the end of your question. We'll be posting live polls and poll results in the polls tab. In fact, there's one there now. We want to hear from you, so tell us what you think. And towards the end of our discussion today, we'll be drawing and announcing names for a special door prize. Ambassador Nikki Haley autographed 3 copies of With All Due Respect to give away on our book club members. You must be present to get one, so don't miss your chance. Stick around till the end of the show. With that, we have a special guest here today, Nikki Haley. Ambassador Haley is here to join us live and take our questions. And we're so thrilled that we have the opportunity to hear from her today. We were incredibly excited, and she was excited to learn that we selected her book for our inaugural book club discussion. So she wanted to join us live. Ambassador Haley, how are you today?
I'm great. It's great to be with you guys. Thanks so much.
Oh, thank you for being on with us today. We have a few questions for you to get this rolling. And we wanted to start with our book club discussion today. In the book, you talk about meeting with women in your travels around the world. Can you tell me how that idea came about? Are the women you met in different countries similar or different to the women you met here in the US?
Well, first of all, thank you for having me. And I'm so excited that you guys decided to start your book club with All Due Respect. And just to give you a little bit of insight, when I was writing this book, you know, as I said to you guys before, history is going to decide the right, the wrong, and how things will be perceived. But I think it's always important for the American public to know all of the information, the backroom sides of things, the feelings that you had, the emotions, the good and the bad. I think that when you know that, it reminds people, one, that you're real, but 2, also it puts them in your shoes so that they can kind of figure out how they think about it. I didn't want this to be a political book. I didn't want that from my last book either. Can't is not an option. I didn't want it to be a political book as much as I want it to be a personal book. We all, in our lives, we all have different challenges. And I think that we just have different jobs. And mine happened to be governor or UN ambassador. And, you know, I think we all kind of go through those same things. And so that was basically the aspect of it. When it came to meeting with women, that happened by accident. What happened was, as we were touring around, first it was with the refugee camps in Jordan and Turkey, where we were dealing with the Syrians. And then it would go on and be with South Sudan and Congo. But what I found in the refugee camps was there were always guards or organizers that were in the rooms when I was trying to get information. And you could just sense like a formality to it. And in order for me to understand what they were feeling and what they were truly seeing, I wanted that out. I wanted it to be just an open conversation. So I started by just having all of the men leave the room. And then just, if there had to be one organizer, it had to be a woman. And then I saw basically that the women just spilled it. They were honest. They were thoughtful. They showed their emotions. And as we did that, what I found was that they were the best ones for me to talk to, because they knew exactly what the situation was on the ground. They knew what the vulnerabilities were, and they knew how to fix it. You know, it's whether they had the country had the courage to fix it. And so I found those very valuable. And so it just became something that I requested every time we went, that I needed to sit with the women by myself to get one-on-one take of what it was like to be in their shoes and how they thought I could help them. And it was very insightful.
Well, thank you for that, Ambassador Haley. It's so nice to virtually meet you. I've been a longtime fan, as is everybody who is a part of this book club. So thank you for taking the time out of your day to join us. That just made me think that's the real need for safe spaces. We hear about these safe spaces on college campuses. And you actually created you found a situation where a safe space actually makes sense, and you were able to really help these women and sadly girls' lives. So thank you for that. The next question we wanted to ask you about has to do with the title of the book, With All Due Respect. So all of us who have read the story know how you texted Dana Perino, a Fox News host, to respond with your comment to Larry Kudlow, suggesting that you were perhaps confused about the policies relating to sanctions in Russia. This, we don't want to get into the policy, of it. We want to talk about organization, why it's so important for women to stand up and defend themselves in a situation like you were in, and if you have any advice for how women can go about doing this.
Well, that was a situation, of course, I wish would not have had to happen, but it really came from the fact that I was doing my job. And when something that was out of my control happened, it was really where I had gone out and announced sanctions for Russia because we had had a National Security Council meeting saying it was going to happen. I had talked to the president the next day. That was going to happen. I only did Sunday shows when they asked me to do them, and they asked me to do a couple of Sunday shows. And so I went and said, we're going to be announcing sanctions on Russia if Stephen Mnuchin hasn't already. And that afternoon he called and he said, Nikki, we've got a problem. The president's changed his mind. And the president has every right to change his mind. That was never the issue. The issue was, okay, I told him, I said, no problem, just go fix it. Let them know that he's decided to delay it. They put out a statement and it didn't fix the situation. And I've found in life is easier when you tell the truth. It may hurt a little bit, but it's always easier when you tell the truth. When you don't, you are creating a bigger problem. So they stalled getting it out there, and the press just hounded my team at the UN. They were saying, why would Nikki say this? This isn't like her. Something had to be behind it. And I called all of them and said, look, guys, this is not going to go well if you don't fix it. And they still didn't do it. And then the next day, I was again calling them saying, look, you guys have to do this. And I finally left it with, either you fix this by 5 o'clock or I'm going to fix this by 5 o'clock. And right before 5 o'clock, Larry Kudlow went out and did a press avail, knowing that that was going to be the first question that was asked. And that's when he said, I think Ambassador Haley got momentarily confused. Now, Larry is a friend of mine. I mean, we have it's not about that. It's about the fact that no one is going to protect your integrity but yourself. And I didn't want to make a stink about it, but I wanted to make sure that everyone knew I was not going to be scapegoated and thrown under the bus. And that's when I happened to be staring at the television. I knew the 5 was getting ready to come on. I got my phone. I texted Dana and I said, can you call me? She said, what's up? I said, I need to go on the record. And she said, okay, what do you want to say? I said, just one statement. With all due respect, I don't get confused. And she said, that's it. And I said, that's it. I'm going to text it to you so you have it in writing. And she went out there, and within 10 minutes, Larry called and said, Nikki, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I shouldn't have done this. And he said, I love you. I'll make it up to you. And I said, oh, you will. And I said, I need you to go out there and tell them that you were wrong and tell them what happened. He said, well, I can't do that. And I said, oh, you can, and you will. And to his credit, within 10 minutes, he went out, he told the press, and the whole issue went away. But the moral of that story is, it doesn't matter whether it's a friend or foe. When your integrity is challenged, when your integrity is questioned, you have to speak up for yourself. You have to, because no one else is going to do it. And you can't allow something like that to be put on you when you've worked so hard to have the reputation that you have. And, you know, and there's times you have to do that. You don't have to be rude. You don't have to pitch a fit, but you do have to make your point. And that's what I had to do that day.
Ambassador Haley, I really appreciate your comments on this. And when we talk about, you know, being an elected leader and being a community, there are many on here today that are community leaders, business women, mothers who are PTA presidents, and yet oftentimes they're the only women in the room. I myself am a community leader, and I find myself to be the only woman in the room. Even though I work for a women's organization. Whether throughout your career path, whether it's through the legislature or at the UN, can you talk about some of the biggest lessons you've learned throughout your career that you can pass on to other women here today?
Well, I never thought that I would be the only woman in the room. You know, it turned out that I was elected to the legislature. Well, I was first in corporate world right out of college. I was the only female executive of the executive team of the company that I worked for. So that was really the first instance that I had. And, you know, just to kind of give you that story, I had just started my new job. I was all excited. I was green, and I had been named accounting supervisor for a company and 6 of its subsidiaries. And we were having a board meeting probably within the first couple of months. And the CEO was running late. And he comes running in 10 minutes later, and he says, "I'm so sorry I'm late." And quickly the CFO looked over at me and said, "Nikki, will you please go get Paul a cup of coffee?" And I remember not knowing what I was going to do, but I knew that the way I handled that would dictate the way they treated me every day going forward. And so I said, "Absolutely, I would be happy to." And I leaned over to the phone in the middle of the table, and I called my assistant, and I said, "Kim, would you please get Paul a cup of coffee?" They never asked me to do that again. And so a lot of it is not that men don't treat women well. Sometimes they don't know what they're doing is wrong. And so I choose to give people the benefit of the doubt. And so, you know, whether it was that, or whether it was, you know, I was elected to the legislature in a state that was lowest in the country on women elected officials, or first female governor, or only woman on the Security Council, I just happened to be in jobs where there was no line to the women's bathroom. You know, I always wished there was, but there wasn't. So as I grew up, what I found was, at first, it's very intimidating. You feel the male presence around the room. You feel physically small. You feel like you need to stay more quiet. And that comes from the fact that women always second guess themselves. We always want to make sure if we speak, we're right. We want to make sure that if we do something, we don't screw it up. And what I'll tell you is, when you're in those situations, remind yourself that you earned the right to be in that room. Also remind yourself that you want to contribute. So say what's on your mind, pick and choose your battles, and work hard. And at the end of the day, I have always been underestimated in every job I've ever been in, but I'm not offended by that. I'm not, I don't resent that. If anything, I've found that inspires me, because if I work hard, I know that I end up proving to people that I'm more than capable to do the job that I'm doing. And so it goes back to kind of what my mom taught me when I was little. Whatever you do, be great at it and make sure people remember you for it. And that means don't think about who's in the room. Think about the fact that you earn the right to be there, and you need to prove to everybody in the room that they are better because you're there.
I really appreciate that advice. And for all of those who are in the chat room and listening today on our book club discussion, please make sure you're adding your questions to our question tab and talking in the chat room. We would really appreciate you adding your questions so we can discuss this book later today. Alexandra asks, your honesty and candor in the books is incredible and a refreshing perspective. Was there much backlash from any past cabinet or UN officials when the book was released?
Well, I mean, I think it really started with the last book that I wrote. When I wrote Can't Is Not an Option, the reason I decided to write it was because I had had a brutal governor's race. I mean, it was racist, sexist, you name it. It was a blood sport in South Carolina when you run for anything. And it was all of those things. And I remember someone coming up to me saying, after seeing everything you went through, I would never run for office. And I was devastated because all I've ever wanted is for real people to run for office, for normal people to run for office. And so I wrote the book because I thought people needed to see, yes, there was bad in that race. And yes, times have been tough, but there was also good and what could come out of it. And so the same thing happened when I wrote With All Due Respect. It was, okay, either I have to do this honestly and with everything good and bad, or not do it at all. And so there was a lot of soul searching. Was I going to talk about the PTSD and go into Charleston the way I did? It had impacted me so dramatically, and no one knew what had happened outside of my husband and my doctor and just a couple of people within my orbit. And so that was intimidating, like whether I should put that out there. The stuff with Rex and Kelly, the fact that they had called me out and tried to get me to go against the president, go along with them. That was going to be, I knew it was going to be explosive. A few people who knew me said, are you sure you want to do that? But I felt like I would be lying to y'all if I didn't put that in the book, because so much of the challenges that I went through happened because of the way Kelly would act or the way Rex would act. And so I needed you to know that perspective, to know why I couldn't get Kelly to get me on the phone with the president or why certain things happened. It was all because of that conversation that had happened. And so, or even going into how graphic some of the issues were in South Sudan and Congo or with Otto Warmbier, but I felt like if you felt what I felt, if you could imagine what I saw, that it would give you a better perspective on life, on challenges, on politics, on policy. And you would put that into perspective in your world. So did I get backlash? Obviously, when the book came out, everybody jumped to the section about Rex and Kelly, and that created a firestorm for about 24, 48 hours. It's a bit of a shame because there was so much more to it than what they were trying to say, but it was true. And, some aspects talked about Charleston and what had happened there. Some talked about the fact that I had had honest conversations with the president. But, there wasn't anything in that book that wasn't true. And there wasn't anything in that book that I ever questioned anybody would say wasn't right. Even Rex and Kelly knew that was the case. The president knew that was the case. And I tried to still be respectful to everyone. I've said that I respect everybody that I ever served with, whether they gave me a hard time or not, because they were true patriots and wanted to serve. So my job wasn't trying to make anybody look good or bad. It was just to let you know what I went through. And I felt like I had to be incredibly honest to do that. So no, I really didn't feel any backlash outside of those first 2 days where they, made this thing about how could you do that to Rex and Kelly? And then, I think the question was asked by someone, well, why didn't you tell the president? And, what Rex and Kelly in that conversation was. And I did. And then once they realized I did tell the president about that conversation, then everything cleared up.
I don't think anybody handle yourself with such grace, their relationship with the president as you have. So that's something I personally have been inspired by. We'll be talking about that a little more amongst the group later, but I just have to say, there's so much we all could learn from you with your ability to manage these sometimes very challenging relationships. Sorry for the technical difficulties, folks, but we're trying to bring a couple of you guys on to directly ask the ambassador questions, but this is a new platform. This is our first time ever hosting a virtual book club, so we appreciate you rolling with us here. Our next question, I'm going to read it. It came in from Christina K. And the question is, what was the most surprising or unexpected thing for you working in government at the federal level after having been at the state level for many years? And or were there any challenges from being a cabinet level official in New York, which is a very different city culturally and politically than DC?
So from the federal versus state aspect, what you find is government, I've always believed, is slow, it's bureaucratic, it can be frustrating. And when it is allowed to be flexible, it can work. And so in state government, I worked really hard to kind of cut through that bureaucracy, cut through the red tape, really kind of preaching that time was money. And if you were costing a person or a business time, you were costing them money. And that was unacceptable in South Carolina. So it was different as governor, because if there was something slow or bureaucratic, I just changed it and was able to cut through that. You get to the federal government, completely different story. I mean, part of it was a blessing that I was a cabinet member, because that allowed me to interact directly with the president, which is why I asked to be a cabinet member, and it also allowed me to make my own decisions, which I thought were really important. So from that aspect, it was good. But it is unbelievably costly, inefficient, and ineffective the way the federal government works. I mean, if this says anything, I would have to go to DC for a cabinet meeting or NSC meeting, or to meet with the president pretty much on a weekly basis. I couldn't even get approval to take the Acela to DC, because it had to go through like 5 different people every single time I wanted to take the Acela, the train. When they would get hold of it, they would say no, that I couldn't do that. And they didn't look at the fact that it was costing more time and more money for me to fly than it would be if I just took the train. And the train was cheaper. And so I had to jump through hoops to do that. Every speech that we gave, we always ran by the NSC and State Department, but for a facts situation. We wanted to make sure that the facts were right. Initially, they tried to pull me in from how I spoke. They thought that I wasn't diplomatic enough. And I just told them I wasn't going to do that. As long as I told them they could critique my facts, because I didn't want to say anything wrong, but they couldn't critique my style. And, and the other side of the federal government is they honestly believe that if they've tried something before, you shouldn't try it again. Or we've done that didn't work, or we can't do that because of this. There's a lot of no in the federal government. And if there was one thing I pushed hard on my staff at USUN and on the State Department was, yes, we can, and tell me why I can't. And when we did that, magic happened. And so, that's the one thing I think the federal government, every agency head should continue to look and see if they're costing a person or a business time, and they need to find ways to cut that out, because it really does slow the effectiveness of helping the taxpayer get what they're trying to do. In terms of being a cabinet member in New York, it was such a blessing, because you don't have to look at the television to know that there's a lot of drama around the Trump administration. It was like that from day one. And so I've been one, I stay away from the drama. I don't get into the gossip, none of that. So the beneficial parts of being a cabinet member in DC is you see your colleagues more, you can entertain with them if you want, you can go to dinner and things like that. I really didn't need any of that. So if I needed something, I got on the phone. When I went there, I did my meetings and I left. The negative side of it, the difficult aspect of being in New York was, if I talked to the president about something, and he agreed with me. If someone in the cabinet didn't agree with me, all they had to do was show up in his office and talk to him. And so I wasn't necessarily there to counteract it. Now, I would pick up the phone and call him and say, remember what we talked about, and this is why. But that was probably the only negative aspect. But I actually loved not being in the craziness of DC because it allowed me to focus more.
It's such an honor to be here. I have to say, for the hundreds of people that are on this call, I am sort of starstruck at the moment, and this is like the opportunity of a lifetime here. So thank you for all of your work. I actually have sort of a lighthearted question. And just to preface it, I'm sitting here. This is the first time I've put lipstick on in 2 weeks. My hair has been in a ponytail for 2 weeks, so it's actually down. I've kind of settled into this staying at home thing pretty well here. So my question to you, and maybe you can give me some advice and others on the call, you're with a lot of women on this call right now. I do see some men too, but tell us some of the things that you do now to look and feel your best as someone in the spotlight, and have your routines changed while you've been staying at home?
Yes, so I'm used to being so busy. And actually, even after leaving the UN, I am busier. I was busier now than I was before. And I've known that. That's what I've always known, is just being busier than I know what to do. So this has been interesting. For those of you that don't know, the reason I left the UN wasn't because I didn't love the job. I absolutely loved the job. It was the fact that our son was a senior in high school, and I wanted to be able to go on college visits with him and tour campuses and help him find his second home. We take care of my parents. They live with us. They're both in their 80s, and my mom has Parkinson's. And so I wanted to make sure that everything was good there. And so there were family things, and it had been 8 years full time. I'm a term limits girl. I think it's important. And so I needed to take this time off. Well, after doing that, I got back into a routine and very busy and involved with family. And then the world stood still, literally overnight. I mean, I keep telling my kids that they will be telling their children, I remember when the world stood still. And so the blessing of it all is I choose to believe that this is God's way of giving us a wake-up call. Reminding us to love our family, to appreciate our friends, to value life, and to take a breath and understand that the craziness. So the way I've chosen to do it is, okay, if we're going to have this quiet time, how can I be productive and still do the things that will keep my brain going and keep my body going and all of those things? I, like you, went weeks without makeup and loved it. Would not sit there and have to do my hair. So when I had to suddenly do it, like a few weeks ago, to do something, I had to remind myself how to put everything back on. But it's such a reminder of how silly all of that is, right? Hair, makeup, and how much we sweat over what we look like and all of that. At the same time, I think now I take it a little bit lighter. I've paid attention to my skin. So I've been like doing face masks and trying different skin products. I always would try and exercise often and didn't always have as much time. Now I'm running at least every other day, and I've enjoyed being able to get out and get a run. I decide every day what things I want to accomplish. So certain aspects of work, I make sure it's always in there so that I'm getting those things done and I don't just sit on the couch all day. And I've tried to treat every week a little bit as a work week. So Monday through Friday, I try and start my day, get up, do my regular morning routine, work for a while, then I'll go out for a run in the afternoon, come back, check some emails, spend time with family, watch TV. And then on weekends, I'll relax a little bit. And so I try and remind myself that Saturday and Sundays are still weekends, and we can do that. So that's been the way I've dealt with it. I've enjoyed, just really focusing on my health and spending time with family. And I hope all of you do that as well.
That's great.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Ambassador Haley, for those comments, your candor, and really talking about what's important in life, family, and having gratitude. I did have one question, which I think might be the most important question you're going to hear today. As a Southern lady, we want to know, do you prefer lemonade or iced tea?
Oh, iced tea, definitely.
Well, that's good to know. We definitely, being from South Carolina, you have to enjoy a good sweet tea. Again, we are so glad you could join us today to share your insights with our readers, and we hope to have you back soon.
Well, and listen, I want to thank you for doing this. And when I heard about you guys doing this, I was like, I want to jump on that and just kind of talk to you about it. And, after I get off, whether there were positive or negative aspects of the book, whether you're Republican or Democrat, whether you're a man or a woman, I hope you get something out of it. And what I want you to get out of it is not the politics. I want you to get out of the realness of it, which is we are all flawed. But we all try and do the best we can. And so, every morning when you wake up, your goal should be just to make today better than yesterday. That's it. Just make today better than yesterday. Work hard, take care of yourself, and really do prove to the rest of the world that you have something to contribute. And don't beat yourself up too much. I have learned a lot by trial and error. And I think that whatever your job is or whatever your situation is, be the best you can be at it and work hard. And the number one thing I'll tell you, is learn that when faced with a challenge, when you get that nervous feeling, that uncomfortable feeling, that intimidated feeling, learn to push through the fear. Because when you push through the fear, you learn that you're so much stronger on the other side. And when you push through the fear, that's when confidence happens. That's when you find out that you really are capable of other things. If I wouldn't have pushed through the fear, I wouldn't have defeated the longest serving legislator back in South Carolina. If I wouldn't have pushed through the fear, I wouldn't have run for governor. If I wouldn't have pushed through the fear, I certainly wouldn't have become ambassador. And so, learn to push through the fear, because if you push through the fear, you live life. If you don't push through the fear, you never know what could have been. So I hope that that's the takeaway from all of this. Have a great time talking about the book. Thank you for everybody that signed on. It's great to be with you. And thank you to IWF. You guys are awesome. I'm such a big fan. I love what you do and look forward to being with you again soon.
Well,
God bless.
Ambassador.
There you have it, folks. Sweet tea is the winner. I never thought I would have heard that. I would have taken her for a lemonade lady. So, I really appreciated the ambassador's comments, especially the last comments, that hard work and pushing through the fear really can help you do anything. You can do anything with hard work and gratitude. That really struck a chord with me. I appreciated her comments.
Absolutely. And I have to say, as someone who never thought I would be any sort of public figure doing national TV, I very much identified with everything she said. Especially, I feel like as women, we do doubt or question ourselves, and we're maybe more perfectionists than men sometimes. And I think she's absolutely right about just the need to try to be great at everything you do. And especially as women, we have such a voice, and we really, look at her. Women can change the world in such incredible ways if we just get over our fear that sometimes, unfortunately, holds us back. I think next we do want to try to get some interaction with all of you to hear what you thought of the book. One question I wanted to throw out that perhaps you can start chatting about in the chat room. Maybe we can bring someone on. But I'm a new mom. Actually, so is Ashley. But I have a 7-month-old daughter at home. And Nikki Haley's book was the first book that I didn't actually read. I listened to it. I had big plans on my maternity leave to get through all the books that I wanted to read while I was working and was too busy. And I realized as a new mom, that's just impossible. And I decided to try an audiobook. And so both myself and my baby girl, Scarlett, listened to Nikki Haley's book. I am so proud to tell her when she's old enough to understand that was the first book that she ever read. And I'm curious, maybe there's other moms out there. Did you listen to Nikki Haley's book instead of read it? And did you catch on to anything through the tone and the emotion in the book that you might not have really had the opportunity to hear in that way had you just read the text? So I'll leave that question out there. We can chat about it and perhaps bring people on. But Amber, what did you think?
Yeah, it's funny. You told me earlier that you had read it or had listened to the book, and I did not. And now I'm going to have to listen to the book because you said you could really read the emotion more. I know in chapter 1, I don't know about anybody else, but with the murders in Charleston, I actually teared up. So I can't imagine if I was actually listening to her tell that story, because she did write her emotions so well. So I think I'm gonna definitely have to listen to it now.
Yeah, it was truly an inspirational book to read, and to hear her point of view from 3 significant times in history. It definitely has to be something that I would love to hear her actual voice telling it and narrating the story.
Yeah. I see people are saying that they really enjoyed listening to it. It looks like a lot of people listen to it, actually.
Well, I can wonder is that reason, so many, in our world, a lot of us read these books from others, and they do tend to come off as very casual. And that was, to be honest, that was my expectation with this book. It absolutely felt like the opposite. It felt very personal, the way she talked about her family, her childhood, the lessons that she learned growing up as a minority. And yes, those very emotional moments for her. You could hear the heartbreak when she was talking about the Charleston shootings, which clearly had a huge impact on her personally. And then I also sensed a little frustration, and you can hear that grit when she does actually take those to stand up and defend herself. But she does it with such class, and I the takeaway to stand up for yourself and defend yourself, but not forge enemies while you're doing that.
Yeah, it's remarkable.
So we have a bunch of comments in the chat room, and I wanted to see if anyone wanted to come up. I see there is Beth Powers. Are you interested in coming up and joining us and telling us about listening to the book? We'll see if we can get you on stage. She listened to the book. Oh, it doesn't seem that I can get her up, but I like that there are a lot of people here who have listened to the book, who enjoyed it. And just remember, for those online, that we are giving away 3 autographed copies of the book at the very end. We have about 10 minutes left in our discussion today, so make sure to stay on for your chance to win an autographed copy of the book.
So just a reminder, if anyone in the chat room does want the opportunity to come up and share any of your thoughts on either on the raised, or raise your own question, or just tell us something that the book, if you put a V next to your name, that will signal to us that you're willing to come join us on video.
And, it's interesting hearing the ambassador's comments today, because I'm not a foreign policy buff, but I did want to note that this book, it really drew me in to learning more about the UN. And I want to note for our members today that IWF has a foreign policy expert on staff, our resident expert to the UN in China, Claudia Rosette. Claudia has reported from across the globe. She's from Asia to the former Soviet Union, Latin America, and the Middle East. She's reported from all of these great, interesting places, as well as many others. She's widely credited with groundbreaking reporting on the United Nations and its dealings with despotic regimes. She was both a staff writer and a bureau chief at the Wall Street Journal. She's also the author of Encounter Books Broadside, What to Do About the UN. So if you're interested in finding out more, you can always go to our website at iwf.org, iwf.org, and click on some of her writings, hear about the foreign policy aspects of the day.
All right. Oh, look who we found.
Hello. You guys hear me?
Yes. Hi, Hadley.
Hi, everyone. I'm our policy director at Independent Women's Forum, and I just wanted to share some of our resources. I saw some chatting and some questions specific to the United Nations and to the World Health Organization, and Ashley has already plugged the work of our foreign policy fellow, Claudia Rosette. I included in the chat area a link to when Claudia joined the IWF podcast to talk about the United Nations. Claudia has also more recently been doing some work on the WHO, and I can only imagine that Ambassador Haley would agree with Claudia's take on the UN and the World Health Organization. I think Claudia does a good job of balancing, the very noble ideals of these organizations and some of the practical on the ground problems or flaws in some of their projects and actions. So I encourage everybody who's joined us for today's book discussion, if you want to continue the conversation about the UN or the World Health Organization specifically, come to iwf.org and you can check out some of our materials there.
Thanks
so much, Hadley. So I invited Terry. I saw in the chat Terry was interested in saying something. Terry, are you there?
I think we have Terry who's joined us.
I'm hoping you can hear me.
We can hear you.
I can't hear you, so I'll just kind of talk. It looks like you can hear me. Can you guys nod that I can see you on screen, that you can hear me? Yeah, you're nodding. So I did get a chance to listen to her book. I listened to it in the car, actually. And her voice, not only is it calming, but there's been a few times in the book where she actually has you laughing out loud in her way about her and how she says certain things. But I am not a nonfiction person. I like book clubs for the fiction, the entertainment, but not only was it poignant and funny and her story, but just the insight she gives, not just to politics, because I know she didn't want it to be a political book, but into unfortunate racism and and also the women, how men treat women, but racism isn't just about black and white. Like she says, it's about brown as well and different cultures. And I have my daughter who's a 25-year-old 8th grade English teacher reading it. And she's coming in every time she reads it. And she's just like, oh my gosh, Mom, did that really happen? And so just to see a different perspective, as I'm listening to it and reading it, it really, I can't put it down. So it was not only inspiring, but it just really gives you some insight. And I love her story and how she tells it. And honestly, I love her respect for not only the president, but the office of the presidency, and anyone she did not agree with, she still treats them with respect. There was a lot of things in the book where she didn't agree with Obama, or she didn't agree with the Secretary of State, et cetera. But there was always respect. And I think that's kind of lost in this country. Thank you for letting me participate.
Thank you so much, Terry. We're so glad you could join us. Anyone else have any comments they would like to make live and talk to us please, we'd love to have you join us. I see that Allison, let's see if Allison can join us on stage.
Getting ready.
Allison is up.
So getting ready.
Oh, she's a public.
And yeah, Terry, I couldn't agree more with your observations. I think that's what I was kind of getting at earlier with her ability to disagree without being disagreeable. Hi, Allison.
Hello, how are you today?
We're great. Thank you for
Thank you. So I'm a public school teacher and an elementary school teacher, and I actually listen to this book in the car on the way to school every morning. There's been some times this year, this is my second year of teaching, there's been some times this year that have been very challenging for me as a teacher, just learning to navigate the world of education. And I have often found that my views as a conservative and an independent are not shared by many of my colleagues. And the education world is often a place that is really against small government, very pro big government. And so to read or to listen to Ambassador Haley's story of how she stood her ground and how she was willing to do the things that others weren't was so inspiring to me and a challenge to me to just keep going and to keep going into school every morning, to keep fighting for what I believe in and to fight for education to be about the kids and not about my rights as a teacher, and not to be about a system, but to be about making the world a better place for our children. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us, Allison.
Yeah, we know it's not easy being a teacher these days, especially a teacher with some conservative or independent viewpoints. So I think we all have sympathy and respect and admiration for you on that front.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. And, you know, we have about 5 more minutes left before we hit the 4 o'clock hour. I wanted to know from you guys and from those in the audience, in the chat room who are watching today, what was your favorite inspirational quote? I know I took away many, many points, whether it's, you know, making sure to have an opinion about a piece of legislation and abstaining is cowardly, to fighting for what you believe and making sure that you're accountable for your actions and being a disruptor. If you have an inspirational quote, make sure you put it in the chat room. I want to hear from our readers what they found interesting.
I have a quick one while we bring people up. It's 3 words that I found very inspirational. Bless your heart.
Yes.
Anyone who's read the book knows how brilliantly Nikki Haley uses those 3 words.
You know, it really was the perfect comeback to ensure that she was heard and she was understood.
Absolutely. And I feel like I can't use them as well because I'm not from the South. I feel like a poser. I feel like it's such only women with Southern charm can pull it off.
You know, I'm glad. And you know what? I see Eileen W. In the chat room. She said she loved that. She actually laughed out loud when she read it. So I see Roxy. It has, we are much more than the sum of our labels. I really appreciated that one as well. And, you know, Rebecca here says, with all due respect, it's just a great way to pivot and address a comment that was inappropriate.
So yeah, Kimberly has one that I want to share. It's my favorite quote from her book. I've actually posted it on my wall, and it is, whenever I can, I check my immediate instinct to respond to the heat of the moment. Run while your instincts are soft. Waiting allows you to pick and choose your battles.
Yeah. And you know, that's actually perfect. It really, oftentimes, I actually did that this week. Instead of waiting 24 hours, I fired off an email, and you know what? I had to later come back and say, you know what? My thought was not complete. I fired this off without thinking through fully what I wanted to say. And I came back, I apologized, and I fleshed out my thoughts a little bit. I really appreciated that comment. And I think with age comes respect. It being in a job for a longer a period of time gives you that life experience.
Absolutely. And I think that can apply probably to a lot of our personal lives as well. Waiting 24 hours to think about how to respond will probably save you a lot of, I don't know, fights, heartache in the long run. Just especially in these tense, crazy times we're living in under these quarantines.
So we're just about to the end of our discussion here. And Amber, I see you're back.
No, I'm sorry. This is like new technology. I was just looking at the chat really quickly. Someone did say talking, when you say something, make it matter. That was like one of my favorites too. So
yes,
I hope that wasn't a subtle message to us running the book club right now.
No, I've been really quiet, so I've been following her advice.
Well, we are at the 4 o'clock hour, and I want to make sure that our book club members know today we have 3 signed copies of With All Due Respect that we are giving away, and we have selected a drawing through our random winners, and we have them here today. I want to thank our book club winners today is Julia Mahoney, Jennifer Wonderland, and Britta Lindstrom. Those are our 3 winners. Julia, Jennifer, and Britta, we will be connecting with you after the program to make sure that we get those books to you. Congratulations, ladies. We are excited that you joined us today for our first book club. And we have a few quick announcements. I think that Kelsey has an exciting announcement coming up on our next book club.
Yeah, now that we hopefully figured out how to host virtual book clubs, we are going to do it again. Next month, we will be reading and talking about Shannon Bream's book, Finding the Bright Side, The Art of Chasing What Matters. Shannon Bream, I'm sure most of you are familiar with her. She is a Fox News host. I have the privilege of meeting her. I've been a guest on her show a number of times, and I have to say she is, if you can even believe it, she's even kinder in person than she comes off on TV. And on TV, she comes off as a pretty incredible woman. So we are super excited to be reading her book and talking about it next month. Stay tuned to IWF, and we'll be sharing a bunch of fun, exclusive details rolling out for that in just a month from now.
So stay tuned. Make sure you can sign up today. You can see the sign up button on your computer or your screen now. Make sure to sign up today for our next book club. I want to thank all of our members for joining us today for the first ever IWF Reads Book Club. We hope you enjoyed the book and the discussion. And if you liked today's meetup, please let us know. Send us a note in the Facebook group or shoot us an email at info@iwf.org. We'd love to hear from you. I hope you have a great weekend, and we hope to see you soon. Bye, everyone.
Bye. Thank you.
I just took a selfie of the group. Thank you all. This was so fun.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Have a good one.